I don't agree with his party's progressive policies. I don't care for their class warfare or attacks on US businesses. And I don't like the fact that Joe Biden, like most politicians, has never had what I consider a real job. Instead, he became one of the youngest ever US senators at age 29 and has been a politician ever since. He got rich with lucrative tell-all books and speeches about his time in the White House. And on top of that, he's presided over the worst US inflation in 4 decades, a collapsing stock market, and has put us ever deeper in debt by catering to the ultra-progressives like AOC and Bernie Sanders. All this has inflamed more partisanship than ever. Even so, I believe Joe Biden, despite the fact that he is now 80 years old and has less than a 45% approval rating in 2023, will not only run again in 2024, but could win a second presidential term by a landslide. Along the way, he'll become one of the most powerful presidents in recent memory. I'll prove it to you today. What's more, I predict many people who hate progressive policies might soon be cheering Biden on because he's helped us make so much money over the next few years. But before I go any further, let me make one thing clear. This has nothing to do with Biden's progressive programs or handouts. So forget his Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, the Build Back Better scheme, or whatever program they dream up next. Instead, Biden could get reelected because of an incredible secret, which lies behind his soon-to-be soaring power. It's a powerful economic force the average American doesn't yet understand, but I'm going to share it with you today. And while Joe Biden and I don't agree on much politically, he's no dummy. He knows how to harness this powerful new force and its inevitable wave, which could carry him to a second presidential term. As I record this analysis today, this secret economic force is building, and the money changing hands is like nothing we've seen in decades. Roughly $62 billion in cash payouts have already been delivered, and hundreds of millions more have already been made in the markets with gains of 394%, 272%, and 278%, just to name a few over the past 2 years, even though we're in the middle of a bear market. Now, my firm issued our first report on this idea in the middle of last year, and soon after, on July 25th of 2022, an obscure government agency quietly issued a press release announcing this secret new economic force had become reality. And now, while most people are getting crushed in the stock market, a group of the in-the-know investors are making a fortune. Today, I want to show you how to get in on this opportunity right now, starting immediately. In fact, in a few minutes, I'm going to show you one of my favorite stock market opportunities to take advantage of the big secret that could carry Joe Biden to a surprise re-election. Now, don't worry, there's no email address, no subscription, no type of payment required to get this information. It's all revealed here, totally free of charge. But I have to warn you, there's a downside to all of this too. This new economic force will change everything about our economy. It will also reshape the world's monetary flows for at least the next 50 years. It'll make millions of Americans vastly wealthier and improve our standard of living. But in the process, it's likely to not only help Joe Biden's re-election campaign, but eventually also give him an unprecedented public mandate. He will use this power to reshape our country even more than he already has, and the progressives will put more and more of our economy under federal government control. The bailouts and the handouts will expand exponentially. Debt forgiveness, universal basic income, higher taxes, windfall profit penalties on our most successful companies. It's all part of a progressive plan that will soon become reality. Now, I've put together this analysis today to explain this new force in our economy. Like I said, there's good news, but also bad news too. And I don't want to sugarcoat it. The good news is that this development can help you make a lot of money in the years to come, even if the overall stock market suffers. The bad news is that it's going to make our government bigger and more powerful than ever, so it's going to be harder than ever to hold on to the money you make. Now let's get to the specifics because time is of the essence. Hi, my name is Joel Litman. I'm a forensic accountant and a consultant to various federal government agencies in Washington, D.C., where I'm filming this today. I work regularly with the FBI, and I've lectured at the U.S. Marine Corps War College, and just yesterday, in fact, I was back at the U.S. Pentagon, my 4th trip inside the last 2 years, to brief top military brass on the state of the global markets and the balance of economic power worldwide. I'm also often asked to address America's top business schools, like Harvard and Wharton. Today, my forensic approach and DC connections help me uncover where the biggest piles of money are headed before that information is known to the general public. That's why all 10 of the biggest money managers in the world have read my work. So have more than half of the 300 world's biggest financial firms. Some Wall Street clients have paid us as much as $100,000 in a single month. We run weekly forensic data reports on more than 32,000 publicly traded businesses. No one on or off Wall Street comes even close to this figure that I'm aware of. But of course, I'm not here to tell you what we've done in the past. Today, I want to share what I've learned about a massive but little known change that's underway right now in the United States. It might be the biggest secret in the financial markets right now. Although it received almost no attention, this change became reality on July 25th and will quickly reshape the economies of the United States and the world. This new force will increase the wealth of the United States and improve our standing in the world, but in the process will also empower the federal government, enabling terrifying and wasteful socialist policies. And although I'm recording this in 2023, after the midterm elections and after Donald Trump announced his 2024 campaign, I already see the path for Joe Biden's landslide re-election. And in a second term, I believe the progressives, using their vast new powers, could increase the Fed's money printing, leading to higher inflation, seize control of the entire 401k retirement system, forcing us to buy risky government debt, implement vast new wealth taxes, continue to expand the welfare rolls by record amounts, buying even more votes. Please understand, I don't want to see a political and economic shift so far left. But the truth is, it doesn't matter what you or I want. This is exactly what is most likely to happen because of the new power the Biden administration will soon possess. I've put together this presentation in part to warn you about what I now see as almost inevitable: how Joe Biden will go down in the history books as one of the most progressive and powerful presidents of all time. Ironically, the massive and secret new economic power at Biden's disposal has nothing to do with his party's politics or any of his programs. As I'll prove to you in the next few minutes, Joe Biden just happens to be in the right place at the right time. And like all politicians, he's an opportunist. He will take these events and craft them into his own narrative. The progressives could use these massive new economic powers to transform America into a modern socialist state. In fact, I believe what's happening today is nearly identical to the events that took place in 1901 and 1930. Most Americans have forgotten how powerful these secret forces can be. Most Americans will tell you this type of development can't happen anymore, but it can, and it's happening right now. Although the mainstream press is paying very little attention, and although the average American doesn't yet have a clue. Now, my team of analysts and I, on the other hand, have published more than 100 pages about this subject already. I've spoken about this at the Pentagon and with some of the most powerful investment firms in the world. And I'm now certain this huge development will transform our country over the next few years. As I'll show you, it's already starting. Most of the changes will be tremendously positive, and there's an extraordinary money-making opportunity here for you. That's why Warren Buffett is making some of his biggest investment bets ever in this idea. It's why so many of America's other best investors are doing the same. I'm talking about people like Jeremy Grantham, Paul Tudor Jones, Joel Greenblatt, George Soros, Jim Simons, the best investor of all time, who averaged 50% plus gains a year for 20 years, Ray Dalio, Carl Icahn, and even Stevie Cohen, the owner of the New York Mets. These folks are all buying the same investments I'm going to show you how to own today. And remember, I'm also going to reveal the name and stock symbol of one of my absolute favorite investments in this space in just a minute. No email, no subscription required. 2 of the billionaires I just mentioned have already gotten in on the same business. But remember, there's a big downside to this too. Our government is likely to get bigger and more powerful than ever, and it's not surprising that most Americans are completely missing this story, because it's been a long time since we've seen anything quite like what is quietly happening right now. In fact, to understand what's really going on today, you have to go back in time quite a ways. It's 1901. Most of the world still lives in darkness. Kerosene for lighting is still a luxury. That's why you bought the Big Hill in Texas. It's a huge salt dome. Locals say there's no oil in it, or in the dozens of salt dimples that dot the Texas landscape. Drilling was difficult at first due to several hundred feet of sand. This made holes prone to caving in. Kurt Hamill, one of your drillers, came up with a revolutionary solution. Instead of pumping water, he used mud, which stuck to the sides of the hole and prevented caving. Then on January 10th, 1901, a blast of natural gas, followed by a towering geyser of crude oil, shot up more than 150 feet. You hit pay dirt, the Lucas #1 well. It produced more than 100,000 barrels of oil per day, more than all other wells in the United States combined. So many wells were drilled around it, they called it Spindletop. And so much oil flowed that the price of crude fell to 3 cents a barrel. The economic impact was unprecedented. The world's navies and railroads switched from coal to oil, and Spindletop fueled a revolution in transportation, making gasoline cheap and widely available. In 1900, there were 8,000 cars in America. By 1916, there were 3.5 million. Now, I'm telling you this story about oil today, even though oil has nothing to do with the powerful force that will likely propel Joe Biden to landslide second-term win. You see, this story from American history is important because it shows how wealth created during this oil boom imbued Americans with a new sense of destiny and power. Teddy Roosevelt personified it. He was a cowboy and a Rough Rider. Americans loved him. Roosevelt used this massive new political power to rapidly expand the government, creating the Food and Drug Administration and the Department of Commerce. This was part of his square deal. He implemented an income tax too, something that was still barred by the US Constitution. The square deal might sound familiar. Similar political programs were implemented by Democratic candidates for decades. FDR had the New Deal. Harry Truman had the Fair Deal. Lyndon Johnson called this program the Great Society. All these programs give incredible levels of power to the government. Unfortunately, the end result of these deals has become nothing more than socialism dressed up to sell to Americans. The income tax Roosevelt strongly supported back in 1913 and had a top rate of 7%. It ended up an economy-crushing 90% tax rate only a few presidencies later. Decades later, it's the same exact rhetoric you hear from Biden and AOC and left-wing progressives. Now, whether you think some of these progressive policies are good or bad is probably a political question, but if there's one thing I've learned from studying the markets all over the globe and presenting my findings to the FBI and the Pentagon, it's this. These types of aggressive progressive policies eventually kill economies. So whatever your politics, just consider this. Teddy Roosevelt was elected a conservative Republican. His own party stood against progressive ideas. But powered by a huge oil discovery and a booming economy, Americans began to demand their government do more. Our sudden wealth changed the political mood. In short, the government, thanks to its oil riches, can now play a much bigger role. It's hard to believe how popular these views became and how they transformed Teddy Roosevelt's presidency. He became the most popular sitting president ever. He was, in a way, more like a European dictator than a US statesman. And by then, most of his ideas had been taken over by the Democrats. Woodrow Wilson, for example, changed the Constitution to pass an income tax, and he set up the Federal Reserve, moving America toward paper money. But I'm getting off track just a bit. The important thing I want you to keep in mind is that no matter what your politics, the key point to consider is, where did this political power come from? Why did Americans subtly embrace bigger government led by a charismatic demagogue? The answer, of course, is energy. And back in the early 1900s in America, this energy came in the form of oil. The Spindletop discovery changed the entire world. And Americans who backed it became some of the richest people in the world. Gulf Oil, Texaco, Amoco, and Humble Oil all trace their origins to Spindletop. With this incredible wealth came hubris, great ambitions, and political power. It was an oil boom that created Teddy Roosevelt's political power. Something very similar is happening in America right now. Extraordinary amounts of money are being made, and an economic force is likely to propel Joe Biden to a landslide second-term victory. But it has absolutely nothing to do with oil. Now let me explain. Before I go any further, I want to make one thing clear. Despite the historical story I just told you about oil, make no mistake about it, the oil and gasoline business is going extinct. As one of my colleagues says, it's a dinosaur. No big investors will get behind oil pipelines, oil refineries, or oil exploration these days. Shell even announced that its oil production peaked several years back and will decline every year moving forward. On top of this, every car and truck manufacturer is moving towards electric vehicles. Some of the biggest manufacturers have even pledged to stop all production of gas vehicles very soon. GM, Toyota, Mercedes, Audi, Nissan, Porsche, Volkswagen, and Volvo, just to name a few. They've all pledged to stop making gas-powered vehicles. Then there's the fact that 15 states have already are setting deadlines to ban the sale of new gasoline cars. The writing is on the wall. Oil is not the fuel you should be focused on today. So what is it? Solar? Wind? Nuclear? Fission? Geothermal? Batteries? No, it's actually a lot simpler than that. The future for electricity, which will power our cars and homes in America and all over the world, is natural gas. As the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, concluded in one of the most comprehensive energy reports we've seen, it's 308 pages, natural gas is clean and flexible, the lowest cost way to reduce carbon emissions up to 50%. MIT's report concludes the role of natural gas in the world is likely to continue to expand under almost all circumstances as a result of its availability, its utility, and its comparatively low cost. Even ExxonMobil published a report stating that natural gas is the fuel of the future. Natural gas can be shipped by pipes, or it can be delivered across oceans in a different form known as LNG, which stands for liquefied natural gas. If you're unfamiliar with the technology, LNG is regular natural gas that's been liquefied for transport. It's cooled and compressed into a liquid, which shrinks it to 1/600th the size of regular natural gas. So it can be shipped in giant container ships all over the globe, used to then power the world's electricity plants. LNG is cheaper and much cleaner than oil or coal. In fact, natural gas is only half as pollutive as coal, and it's the number one reason why we've been able to radically reduce carbon emissions compared to a decade ago. In short, for many decades to come, natural gas will power the world's electricity grids. Now, okay, but hold on. I know what you're probably thinking. What about all the green energy developments? What about solar and wind and the other green energy technologies out there? Look, just like everyone else, I want a better and cleaner environment and less pollution. And someday, at some point in the future, battery technology, wind power, and solar will probably become efficient enough to make up a meaningful portion of the electric grid. But not today, and not anytime soon. Not in the next 20 or 30 years, not at least. And that's not just my analysis. The U.S. Energy Information Agency says wind and solar combined last year made up just 12% of the power grid today. Even dirty coal made up almost twice as much at 22%. Looking out at the next few decades, the U.S. Energy Information Administration says by 2050, renewables will make up still only 38% of the U.S. grid. To put it as plainly and simple as possible, without natural gas, no electrical grid anywhere in the world will continue to function at anywhere near capacity. And luckily for us, the U.S. is set up to completely dominate this space for many years to come. In fact, in a decade, no one will need Saudi Arabia. And this is all happening right now for two simple reasons. One, because America has some of the best natural gas reserves in the world. And two, because America has the best natural gas export infrastructure on the planet. And I'll give you more details about that in just a second. So get this, as recently as 2016, we were still importing massive amounts of natural gas. We basically weren't exporting natural gas at all. But in July 25, 2022, just 6 years later, the US officially became the #1 LNG exporter on the planet. This is why prices and demand for US natural gas are going to soar from here, and why the best US firms could skyrocket in value as the world turns to the United States for more and more natural gas. As I'll show you in a second, this is already happening. In short, the world's energy markets are in the process of being turned upside down, and America, with our vast reserves of natural gas and the world's best gas infrastructure is at the center of it all. I predict that not too distant future, the July 25th government announcement will be recognized for cementing Joe Biden's name in the history books. Future generations will look back during Joe Biden's presidency, how he changed the big oil landscape, although he really had little to do with it, and became an American hero, remembered for decades. This quiet revolution, which is just in the first inning right now, will pick up steam in a massive way in the years to come. And as we've seen multiple times, if you can get in at the beginning of the energy boom like this, the profits can be incredible, no matter what's happening in the rest of the markets. In the 1970s, for example, even big companies like Exxon, Texaco, Mobil, Chevron, Atlantic Richfield, Unocal, and Amoco shot up an average of 234%, while the S&P 500 stock market index went up just 16%. Just $1,000 invested in each of these companies at the beginning of the 1970s would be worth more than $1.3 million today. More recently, during the oil fracking boom from 2002 to the middle of 2008, 33 energy companies soared more than 500% in the stock market, and nearly a dozen soared more than 1,000%. Now, of course, these are the best performing examples. Nothing is guaranteed, and you should never invest more than you can afford to lose. But that's the kind of money I believe we're looking at here over the next 5 years or so. Already we've seen 10 companies soar between 121% to 394% over just the past 2 years because of this trend, and it's only going to escalate further from here. The simple truth is, American LNG is now and will continue to be the cleanest, the cheapest, and the most important energy resource in the world, and will hold this position for many, many years to come. Around my office, we call what's happening today the American shale renaissance because of the massive shale fields producing so much natural gas. It's now in full swing, but still in the early innings, and it's already making people tons of money and transforming the economy. You might think all this can't continue with Biden's notoriously anti-energy rhetoric, but when I show the LNG infrastructure being built right now, I think you'll be blown away. Like I said, Biden is no dummy. He knows that presidents who garner the most economic power end up achieving the most political power. Biden needs cheap energy to grow the economy, so he'll continue to change the big oil landscape by shunning oil and pushing natural gas. He will become an American hero, remembered for decades to come, simply by allowing the new LNG energy boom to play out as it's already unfolding. It's incredible how fast this LNG transformation has occurred. Remember, until 2010, America was still one of the world's largest importers of natural gas. Now, we are by far the biggest exporter. And like I said, two simple but very important facts make this all possible. Fact number one, the US is already the largest producer of natural gas in the world because we are sitting on some of the greatest natural gas reserves on the planet. For starters, just one US spot, the combined Marcellus and Utica shales, which stretch from New York to Kentucky throughout much of the Appalachian Basin, are the largest reservoir of natural gas on Earth. A Penn State geoscientist says this one area can produce 500 trillion cubic feet of recoverable gas. Just this one spot has enough natural gas to supply the US for hundreds of years, according to the US Energy Information Association. This is one of the primary reasons why, as this graphic from BP shows, America produces by far the most natural gas on the planet right now. Then there's critical fact number two, which few people realize. America today has by far the best natural gas infrastructure on the planet. We have pipelines that stretch around our country, plus the best export infrastructure, which is growing exponentially. Now, here are the shocking numbers that should be on the front page of every newspaper. While America today dominates the world's LNG export industry with 8 LNG export terminals already in place. Now, remember, until 2016, there were 0 on the US mainland. This LNG export infrastructure boom is actually just getting started. That's because 5 more LNG export terminals are already under construction. 3 in Louisiana, and 2 in Texas. Then there are 12 more approved LNG export terminals, which are not yet under construction. 4 more will be built in Louisiana, 4 more in Texas, 1 in Mississippi, 1 in Florida, 1 in Alaska, and 1 in the Gulf of Mexico. And then on top of all that, there are another 8 LNG export facilities, either pending application or in pre-filing status, and all of these are in Louisiana and Texas. All told, that's 24 more LNG export facilities in America in the works, according to the U.S. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And like I said, this should be on the front page of every newspaper. This should be one of the biggest stories in America today. We are now in the early innings of building, by far, the largest LNG export infrastructure system on the planet. But basically, no one's paying attention. You can already see the effect it's having. Look at this incredible chart that shows how our natural gas imports have rapidly declined while our exports have soared. This trend will reshape the world's energy markets and the global economy. In a decade, Saudi Arabia and its oil reserves will be irrelevant. Today, natural gas costs roughly 8 times more in Europe than it does here in the US. As one analyst recently wrote, global natural gas price disparities represent one of the greatest business arbitrage opportunities of all time. And that's what I want to show you how to take advantage of today. Today, we produce about 23% of global LNG demand, but export volumes will go much, much higher from here. Get this, US natural gas exports grew 100% between 2019 and 2021, and I think they'll easily grow another 100% from here. That's probably a dramatic understatement when you realize we are increasing the number of LNG export facilities by probably 300% or more in the years to come. Now that's a lot of numbers, I know. And if you want to see the sources for these figures and all the data presented here, see our details and disclosures page, linked at the bottom of this page. My main point here is that this incredible trend is not something that might happen. It's already taking place right before our eyes. Look at this chart that shows how US LNG exports have soared more than 1,000% over the past 6 years. This is all a huge and profitable trend you want to be a part of. The money to be made could be extraordinary. Everyone has been obsessed with tech stocks for the past 14 years, but many Americans forget how profitable an energy boom can be. As I mentioned earlier, during the oil fracking boom in America from 2002 to the middle of 2008, 33 energy companies soared more than 500% in the stock market, and nearly a dozen soared more than 1,000%. That is the kind of money I believe we're looking at here over the next 5 years or so. Now, I'm not the only one saying this, of course. This is why Warren Buffett, who many consider the best investor in history, is making some of his biggest investment bets ever in American LNG. This is why so many of America's other best investors are doing the same. I'm talking about people like Jeremy Grantham, Paul Tudor Jones, Joel Greenblatt, George Soros, Jim Simons, the best investor of all time, who averaged 50% plus gains a year for 20 years, Ray Dalio, Carl Icahn, and Stevie Cohen, the owner of the New York Mets. They're all doing the same thing. These folks are all buying the same American LNG companies I'm going to show you how to own today. And remember, I'm also going to reveal one of my absolute favorite investments in this space in just a minute. No email, no subscription required. Long story short, the world is going to need extraordinary amounts of natural gas in the years to come, and US companies will be by far the biggest provider. So while the media and the politicians are focused on gasoline prices and green energy, which even in the best case scenarios is several decades away, they're missing the big story. For those of us who learn how to position themselves to take advantage of this boom, the rewards will be extraordinary. But like I said, there's a downside too. I detailed how the spindle-top oil discovery made a hero of Teddy Roosevelt and allowed the federal government to get a lot bigger and more powerful. Well, that wasn't the only time this has happened in America. Let me show you what I mean. It's 1930. You've just sat down at a poker game hosted by the Texas gambling legend H.L. Hunt. As he rakes in the big pots, he begins telling you about his new oil deal. We imagine it went something like this. There's this poor fool down in East Texas sitting on the biggest oil field anyone has ever seen. But once you know it, he's plumb out of money, and he's got widows that invested with him all over the state. I'm going to take the whole field away from him for almost nothing, the poor fool. Whatever was said exactly, the fact is H.L. Hunt offered $30,000 up front and $1.3 million through production if any oil was found. The owner was relieved of his legal troubles, and he told Hunt, "Boy, I hope you make $50 million. And that's a true story. Hunt bought the greatest oil field in U.S. history without using a cent of his own money. Over the next 50 years, the East Texas field would produce 4 billion barrels of oil, making Hunt one of the world's richest men. Although many historians credit the New Deal FDR implemented for accelerating the recovery from the Great Depression, that's looking at history through the lens backwards. What really happened is clear. The East Texas field created a tremendous amount of wealth. In the short term, lower oil prices caused a wave of economic disruption. But in the long term, it provided FDR with an immense amount of power, allowing him to launch one socialist scheme after another to the overwhelming applause of the electorate. People who don't believe Americans don't want socialism haven't studied presidential politics. No other president did more to build up the social safety net in America than FDR. He launched Social Security. He launched government's efforts to provide mortgage loans. He seized all the privately owned gold in the country just so he could massively devalue the US dollar. He set up one government-led scheme after another, including more than 30 agencies: the CCC, TVA, FCC, NLRA, the FHA, the FDIC, the PWA, etc. The agencies were created to reward backers, punish foes, and to buy votes by the millions. And how did America react? They reelected FDR 3 times, making him the only president to serve more than 2 consecutive terms. Whether you like it or not, presidents who garner the most economic power end up achieving the most political power. And for the last 150 years, the root of modern economic power has come from the world's oil fields. Today, Joe Biden is likely to do the same, but with natural gas instead of oil. He'll be seen as a hero to a new generation. He will cement his name in the history books. He'll continue to change the big oil landscape by transitioning to natural gas and become an American hero remembered for decades to come. If pressed by his own party, Biden will explain how he must do this because Putin has cut off gas to Europe and elsewhere. He can pitch it as a humanitarian effort. Without cheap energy, a food crisis is coming to Europe and elsewhere around the globe. Everyone at the highest levels know that producing more natural gas is the only way to provide for a growing economy here and abroad. And to get reelected, that's exactly what Biden needs. The beauty of this situation is Biden doesn't have to do anything except stay out of the way like he's doing right now. He doesn't have to pass new laws or executive orders. Remember, today we already have 8 LNG export terminals up and running. There are 5 more under construction, another 12 more facilities already approved, but not yet under construction, and another 8 moving through the application process. So in the coming years, we're likely to have something like 24 more LNG export facilities built here in America. No other country comes close to the US when it comes to LNG infrastructure. This is why America grew LNG exports by about 30% last year, more than the rest of the world combined. Our lead is likely to go for many years to come. So while just about everything in America seems to be trending down these days, this is the one thing trending up, and in a big, big way. And while America is in the early innings of building 24 new LNG export facilities across the Atlantic Ocean, Europeans are spending billions to build literally dozens of LNG import terminals to accept all the new natural gas. Just one quick example. A German import facility that would normally have taken years to build is being completed in just months. As the project manager told the Wall Street Journal, it's a race against time. This chart shows how Europe is quickly transitioning away from Russian gas to other imports. Again, this is a huge story, yet most Americans are clueless. Vast amounts of inexpensive natural gas will flow into new markets all over the world. It will create hundreds of billions in profits annually for US-based gas firms. It will lead to huge gains for investors, and America's massive and cheap energy supplies will encourage more companies to move manufacturing back to the United States as well. Another win for Biden. In fact, it's already happening. GE, Whirlpool, Otis Elevators, Whammo Toys, makers of Frisbees and Slinkies, just to name a few firms, are moving manufacturing to America. IBM is spending $20 billion to build a computer chip operation in New York. In a recent survey of 709 US manufacturers, 83% said they are likely to move production operations back to America. Foreign manufacturers are setting up shop in the US in a big way too. Toyota is building a $1.3 billion battery plant in North Carolina. Samsung is building a $17 billion semiconductor plant in Texas. And because so much more industrial space will be soon needed in America, the real estate service firm Savills predicts that over the next 5 years, 68 metropolitan areas in the US and Canada will see the addition of 10 million square feet or more of new industrial facilities. That's incredible figures for industrial growth. The downside, however, is the progressives will convert this power into a new kind of American socialism. I believe today's progressives will convert America's natural bounty into a giant political slush fund. I expect Biden's second term will include massive new taxing powers that propel the progressives to launch one social spending program after another. They'll oversee the largest expansion of the welfare state in history. They'll launch even more new federal agencies and regulations. They'll enrich thousands of backers and tax the people who make it all possible on a scale never seen before in America. What's even scary to think about is who will come after Biden. Perhaps someone like Gavin Newsom, the ultra-progressive governor of California. Can you imagine an entire country moving as radically left as the state of California? I strongly believe that's what's coming. So what can you do about it? Two things. First, make sure you set yourself up to profit from this massive economic trend. And second, learn the best ways to protect and keep your money going forward. Now, here are the 4 steps I recommend. Today, I'm going to give you the name of one of my favorite ways to take advantage of this enormous force that's only beginning to take off in the US economy. One of the safer, most sure, and most lucrative ways to take advantage of this LNG trend over the next 5 years is to own the businesses that supply the equipment and services for the LNG industry here in America. Remember, there are likely to be 24 new LNG export facilities built here in the years to come, in addition to the 8 already in place. And today, I want to show you how to own a fantastic company that supplies the pipes, the pumps, the compressors, etc., as well as services, all the equipment and infrastructure to keep the LNG fields running. And because a recent financial transaction few people know about, we have the opportunity to buy one of America's very best LNG equipment and service businesses at a dramatically reduced price. Here's the deal. The company I recommend you buy right now is called Baker Hughes, and the stock symbol is BKR. The reason this company is flying under the radar is because in 2016, it combined with a division of GE. So when folks look up the company's financials, they only see data going back to when this merger took place in 2016. What most investors miss is this company has been around for over 100 years. And in boom energy years, like we're headed to into now and for the next decade, the profits this company generates and the returns for investors are just incredible. In the last 6 energy booms, for example, the company has shot up at least 100% in value, and it often shot up around 200% during these periods. So today, you can buy Baker Hughes, one of America's best LNG equipment service companies, at a super low price. We conservatively expect gains of 100% or more, plus huge dividends along the way. Again, the stock symbol is BKR, and we recommend you buy the company up to $40 per share. So that's step number 1, a safe and conservative way to double your money in the coming years. But please keep in mind, there are other bigger and potentially much more lucrative steps we recommend you take as well, including the next step I strongly recommend you take is to build what we consider the perfect LNG portfolio of US firms that gush cash in this shale renaissance and should provide extraordinary gains over the next few years and beyond. For example, one of the companies in our perfect portfolio is one of the biggest natural gas pipeline operators in the US. And get this, about 50% of America's natural gas headed for exports touches this firm's pipeline. We expect the price of this company to soar in the years to come, and along the way, you should receive huge cash dividends, which are approximately 6% of the share price as I speak. One thing I love about this company is how management's incentives are aligned directly with yours. The CEO earns a salary of just $1. So like you, he only makes money when the share price goes up and big dividends are paid. Another company in our perfect portfolio controls some of the best properties in the Marcellus and Utica developments. I mentioned earlier how these properties combined are the biggest energy reserve in the world. And I believe this firm is set to make a fortune in the years to come. One of the big reasons is because unlike so many other natural gas firms, this firm did not hedge future earnings. Because you see, many companies like to lock in future prices so they know exactly how much money they'll make. This company, however, has removed all hedges for 2023. So if LNG prices rise, as we expect, their gains will soar. We conservatively estimate 300% plus gains in the coming years, and that's not including dividends. There's much more too. There are several other investments we strongly recommend you buy right away. All told, we've found 5 companies that make up what we think is the perfect LNG portfolio to take advantage of this trend. Overall, in the coming years, we expect you could double or triple your money owning these businesses and collect enormous and growing cash dividend payments along the way. Everything you need to know, which stocks to buy, what price to pay, and how to allocate your money among these investments is explained in full in my newest special report called The Perfect LNG Portfolio. And that brings me to from this point forward, America will be the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. We will dominate this global market for a long time. One consequence of this trend is profits from this part of the US economy will create taxes and power, allowing Biden and future presidents to expand the federal government's reach like never before. These predictions might surprise you, but when this comes to pass, what will shock you most is how millions of Americans will applaud these changes. Many of your neighbors don't understand freedom. They don't want lower taxes. They don't seek more opportunity. They want more handouts, more rules, more programs, and bigger government. Well, even if this isn't what you and I want, we can use this trend to our advantage. Because you see, in addition to the LNG investments I've mentioned already, I strongly encourage you to immediately buy shares in a business I sometimes refer to as US Government Inc. It's a publicly traded firm that might be the best retirement stock in America. It's so intricately tied to the growth of the US government that it's almost like an arm of the government, but one that pays you instead of the other way around. In fact, our forensic accounting shows that 99% of this company's revenues are in some way connected to the US government. I believe this is the perfect retirement stock right now because there is zero doubt in my mind the US government will be much bigger in the future. And there's also very little doubt the company I call US Government Inc. will continue to see soaring revenue, record profits, and will continue making investors rich year after year. Now look, this business simply crushes the stock market averages over the short and long term. Over the past 5 years, it's up 30% more than the S&P 500. Over the past decade, it's up almost 500% more than the overall stock market, outperforming even high-tech companies like Facebook, Google, and Intel. And over the really long term, the past 30 years, it's up more than 5,900% with dividends reinvested. That's one thing I almost forgot to mention. It also pays huge dividends, which go up about 10% a year on average. So you could collect fantastic cash distributions while you watch the share price climb higher. Everything you need to know is in my detailed report, Growing Wealthy with US Government Inc. This report, like the one I'll send you on the perfect LNG portfolio, will be among the first things I send when you start a no-risk trial subscription to my firm's investment research service called Hidden Alpha. Here's how it works. As I mentioned, I'm a forensic accountant. Yes, I'm a certified public accountant, a CPA, but there's much more to forensic accounting than what goes on into getting a CPA. You see, forensic means capable of holding up in court. A forensic accountant can't just accept numbers on their surface. You have to prove discrepancies beyond any reasonable doubt. This level of accounting detail is critical in the treacherous market we're in right now. That's why I've been asked to speak with the Pentagon officials more than 10 times in recent years. They want my insights on the financial health of companies and economies at home and abroad. But what does forensic accounting have to do with the stock market? Well, I've identified over 130 flaws and discrepancies in the generally accepted accounting principles, called GAAP accounting, used to keep the books of every American publicly listed company, every American company trading. These are the same numbers fed to the so-called experts you see all over TV and the mainstream media. But when you apply my forensic accounting principles, correcting these 130 flaws, the numbers and the outlook for the stock can change drastically. In short, this is what enables my team and I to see where the huge hidden piles of money are moving next before it's recognized by the investment public. I use my army of 100 analysts to dig in the numbers like no other firm on or off Wall Street. Then we go further. For example, one extra step that we take is to put the CEO's conference calls through our proprietary truth detector system to see when they are likely to be misleading. Our firm is called Altimetry, and there's simply nothing else like it accessible to regular folks. Across all the work we've done, our picks are up on average more than 50% higher than the S&P 500 over the same period. Across all the research I've published over the past few years, we've closed out partial positions for gains including 859%, 148%, and 132%. And we've got open gains today, right now, as high as 320%, 175%, and 170%, just to name a few. Of course, these are some of my best recommendations and no guarantee for how other picks will perform. In a little more than 2 years, we've already seen 16 100% plus winners. The point is, our approach works extremely well, and I don't think anyone should be investing without this knowledge and insight right now. The market is simply too dangerous, and the truth is, you simply can't find this type of forensic research anywhere else unless you work for one of the best hedge funds or massive global money managers. We charge our corporate clients as much as $100,000 a month to access our data. But we decided about 3 years ago to also begin publishing a special version of our research for regular folks too. And it's called Hidden Alpha. And it's a monthly stock research service for people who want to manage at least some of their own money. And today, when you start a no-risk trial subscription to Hidden Alpha, I'll send you all the research I've described so far, and at a tiny fraction of the price the big money managers pay. The forensic approach is how we discover the huge shift happening in the world's energy complex. It's how we knew that in July of 2022, America became the largest exporter of natural gas on the planet. It's how we know these LNG companies are in store for simply astonishing revenue growth in the next few years. When you sign up for a risk-free trial subscription to my firm's Hidden Alpha research, among the first things you receive are the perfect LNG portfolio. This report details a half dozen businesses dominating America's LNG development and exports and are most likely to provide extraordinary gains. We show you every company, what price to pay, and how to allocate your invested amount in this mini portfolio. We expect hundreds of percent in upside gains and cash dividends of up to 50% or more over the long term. Growing wealthy with U.S. Government Inc. There is simply no other business like this one on the planet. The returns, the cash dividends, the growth prospects, nothing else can touch it. It might be the perfect retirement stock to protect and grow your money moving forward. Plus, each month in Hidden Alpha, you'll get access to our best ideas and access to the top recommendations, but at a tiny fraction of the price the big institutions pay. So how much does Hidden Alpha cost? Well, I believe it's the biggest bargain in the investment world, especially when you consider accessing my work costs big institutions as much as $100,000 per month. But before I give you the specifics, I want to tell you about one more critical step I recommend you take right now. One of the things most Americans don't realize right now is that when an energy boom hits, like what's happening in America right now, some small companies always soar higher than most people can imagine. For example, when the Canadian tar sands became an important energy asset, a small company called Oil Sands Quest in Saskatchewan shot up 20,000% in roughly 5 years. In the 2000s, when oil companies first began working the Bakken and Barnett shale fields, EOG Energy shot up more than 2,000%. Pan Orient shot up 1,400%. XTO Energy shot up 6,400%. Interline Resources shot up 57,000% in 4 years. Eden Energy shot up more than 43,000% in 2 years. The list goes on and on. And here's the critical point. Nothing in the stock market, not tech stocks or IPOs or anything else, has the potential to produce simply massive gains than small cap energy stocks in an energy bull market. We've already seen a handful of LNG companies double or nearly double in value since the beginning of 2022, while the overall stock market fell hard. And I expect much more of this over the next few years. That's why I encourage you to make 2 small investments in speculative American LNG firms right now. Just keep in mind, this step is a calculated speculation, so it's not for everyone. One of these companies I suggest you buy is a very small firm that owns prime LNG shale assets in Texas and New Mexico. They've just made 2 key acquisitions and are set to grow at a very rapid pace as LNG exports keep growing. Today, this company is very cheap, and it's just 1/600th the size of big energy firms like Exxon. I conservatively estimate 500% upside from here. The other energy speculation I want you to buy right now is the only type of pure play business of its kind with all its operations in U.S. properties. Again, I think the price will absolutely soar from here, and it's very cheap today. I'm not going to say much more about these 2 companies here because we'd like our subscribers to get into these trades before we reveal more to the broader public. But I will tell you that one of these companies is about 1/200th the size of Exxon. The other is about 1/600th the size. Again, these are very, very small stocks, so this step is not right for everyone. Most will probably do just fine by following the first 3 steps I outlined. Also, you must remember that all investments carry risk, and these speculations even more so. Just because we've found so many incredible opportunities over my long career doesn't mean we'll do so again. And of course, you should never invest money you can't afford to lose. Everything you need to know about this 4th step is explained in our detailed report called My Favorite 2 LNG Speculations. Look, right now is a very difficult time for most people to invest. There are still major landmines in the market, and certain sectors still have a long way to fall. You cannot just buy the dip. You cannot just buy the companies that did well in the last bull market. You must make sure you rid your portfolio of the stocks that are most likely to suffer still more pain. That's why when you try my Hidden Alpha research, I'll also give you access to my S&P 500 ranking database, which grades every stock on the S&P 500. So you can figure out the best moves to make with other stocks in your portfolio. Please don't buy any stock today until you see how it ranks in grades in my proprietary online system. Access to my S&P ranking database is for paid subscribers only. My goal here is simple. I want to make sure you're positioned to take advantage of the biggest trend of the next 5 years, America's LNG dominance, and to avoid the companies collapsing all around us. So to sum it all up, when you start a subscription today, you'll receive the perfect LNG portfolio, Growing Wealthy with U.S. Government Inc., My Favorite 2 LNG Speculations, plus you'll get the next full year, 12 issues, 1 delivered each month, of Hidden Alpha. As soon as you start a no-risk trial subscription to Hidden Alpha, I'll send you all the research above immediately. Then on the first Monday of each month, you'll receive my newest Hidden Alpha issue. Each month, I'll show you our favorite new investment recommendation to buy and update you on everything we've already recommended. You'll always know exactly what to buy and what to sell. And you'll get subscribers-only access to my forensic database called The Altimeter. Just type in any S&P 500 stock market symbol, and you'll see my forensic grade on whether this stock is a good buy or something to stay away from. Normally, our work costs a minimum of $200 per year for individuals, but today, you can get started with trial subscription just $49 for the next full year. Keep in mind, clients have paid as much as $100,000 per month to access our research, and for good reason. Of course, like I said, you've also got to understand that all investments carry risk, and our past performance is no guarantee for future success. No matter what you invest in, never invest more than you can afford to lose. Since inception, the average return for Hidden Alpha is 32.8%, which is much higher than the S&P over the same period. I've been so successful over the years because my forensic approach allows me to obsess about minimizing risks by digging deep into the real numbers. That's why when people with lots of money on the line need critical information, they pay a small fortune for our insights. A very quick example. A well-known money manager paid me $100,000 not too long ago for a single report on a single day when a company he owned was being investigated by the SEC. He needed to know whether to dump the position or to add to it. And I estimate the guy made probably more than $20 million as a result of us helping him make the right choice. This is why Harvard Business School professor John Sfiokla says of our unique system, unless you're running billions of dollars and hiring the best talent, you'll never see anything like this. In short, we can now do essentially the same work for you that we do for billion-dollar hedge funds and money managers, but at a fraction of the price. We're in a very dangerous time for investors right now. Please don't try to do this on your own. There are both huge opportunities right now and huge potential pitfalls. That's why as soon as you sign up, I'll send you one more thing. My critical report called 10 widely held stocks you should sell immediately. There's a good chance you own at least one of these stocks, and I'll show you why they're all a disaster waiting to happen. With Hidden Alpha, I'm not going to overwhelm you with reams of data, just concise write-ups and specific steps to take advantage of our best ideas. Perhaps the best part is that you can start with a totally risk-free trial subscription right now for as little as $49 for the next year. You see, all I'm suggesting is that you try our research for yourself to see if it's right for you. If not, no problem. Simply cancel your subscription online or over the phone in the next 30 days, and you'll get a full refund for your subscription fee. I hope you take advantage of this opportunity. Right now, there's a short window to become an early investor in America's best LNG businesses, but this window won't last long. I firmly believe that in 5 years or so, we could look back and realize this is the most important economic trend of our time. It reminds me a little bit of when I was interviewed in Barron's years ago. We were talking about microchip stocks, which power all our digital devices. There was a lot of doubt in this sector. Personal computer sales had fallen an average of 5% a year for 3 years. But I knew where the big piles of money were headed, and I knew from my forensic accounting analysis that a company called AMD had numbers that are going to turn out much better than they appeared in the official statements. I told Barron's AMD should soar, and since then, it's up about 6,500%. Remember, the pace of infrastructure development and building out America's LNG export facilities is accelerating. There will be something like 24 new export facilities built in America in the coming years, increasing our capacity by roughly 300%. This is all happening quickly, but we're still in the first inning. This is why Warren Buffett just made one of the biggest investments of his career in U.S. energy companies. This is why so many famous and really wealthy investors have bought into the exact same investments I'm going to show you how to buy today. Don't sit by and watch this entire super profitable trend pass you by. Many of these investments are really cheap today, but they likely won't stay that way for long. My team and I have put together all the research you need to get started in a low-priced and low-risk approach. And again, if you decide after taking a look that our research is not for you, no problem. Simply cancel your subscription online or over the phone in the next 30 days, and you'll get a full refund for your subscription fee. To get instant access to everything I've described here and to review a summary of this offer before submitting your order, click the Get Started button below, which takes you to our online order form. I almost forgot to mention, there's one more huge new benefit we've just introduced for Hidden Alpha subscribers. I think it can help you make a lot of money next year. Everything is detailed on the secure order form. Thank you for your time. I hope you're as eager to take advantage of this development. It's a big opportunity in a market where there's not much to get excited about. Most people are still taking big losses, but you can begin to potentially earn huge gains over the next year and beyond. Again, to access everything I've described here in a matter of minutes, just click the Get Started button below, which will take you to our secure order form.